Hi, Professor Caraway. The case that we chose to discuss involves a Virginia woman, Julie Briskman, who was fired for giving Trump's motorcade the middle finger when it passed her while she was riding her bike. Julie Briskman is a marketing analyst for Akima LLC, which is a federal contractor located outside of Washington, D.C. So I will be arguing first that Akima was justified in terminating Mrs. Briskman when the photo of her flicking Trump off went viral. So first, Virginia is an employment at will state. So this means that either party in an employment contract may terminate the employment at any time for any reason, unless doing so violates an employee's statutory or contractual rights. So Akima had a policy in place based on social media obscenity, and Mrs. Briskman violated this policy by posting the image to her personal Facebook and Twitter accounts. There are some exceptions to the application of the employment at will doctrine, including the contract theory exception, the tort theory exception, and public policy exception. The first exception, based on contract theory, says that an employee cannot be fired outside the terms of an implied contract. However, if the implied contract exists and the employee is fired within its terms, that's allowed, especially if the employee had reason to believe that the employer would follow the policy that was in place. So in this case, Akima had a social media policy in place against posting obscene things that could hurt the reputation of the company. And Mrs. Briskman should have reasonably believed that Akima would follow the policy, and therefore this exception would not apply. Tort theory and public policy exception also don't apply in this case. Tort theory involves lawsuits in which an employee was fired and there was an intentional infliction of emotional distress or defamation, and that clearly did not happen here. The public policy exception involves cases where an employee is fired in violation of public policy of the jurisdiction, usually involving a whistleblowing case. So, in conclusion, this photo that was posted became a social media tattoo, as the article stated, that could hurt the reputation of the company. The company had a policy preventing these obscenities from being posted on social media, and Mrs. Briskman was well aware of this policy, as she informed HR when the picture was posted and became popular. Therefore, Akima had a right to fire Mrs. Briskman under the employment at will doctrine.
We do not dispute the fact that Virginia is an at-will state, but we do not believe that this is just a state issue. We think it's extended into the federal courts because the firing of Ms. Briskman is an effort to preempt an unconstitutional retaliation towards Akima from the President of the United States. Now, fearing this retaliation is not a silly idea in this day. The tweets that come from President Trump's personal account have made it clear the president takes offense to petty things and will use this platform to try and influence the course of business and individuals' jobs. A large factor in Colin Kaepernick still being a free agent is because the President Trump tweeted multiple times such things like, quote, "Owners should get that son of a bitch off the field right now. He's fired. Fire him." Another example would be President Trump taking a real personal stake in Jameel Hill's job at ESPN, tweeting, quote, "With Jameel Hill at the mic, it's no wonder ESPN ratings have tanked. In fact, it tanked so badly it is the talk of the industry." So clearly this is an administration that's not afraid to publicly play favorites and cordon off certain individuals that do not agree with its politics. This is an overreach of the executive branch, and this is a violation of private citizens' right to free speech. Secondly, with regard to the social media policy that Akima has, Akima is claiming that the firing is due to a violation of this policy that prohibits obscene or inoffensive content. However, you could not see Ms. Briskman's face in the photo, and nowhere on her social media presence does she mention Akima LLC by name. In fact, Akima only became aware that was Ms. Briskman in the photo when Ms. Briskman made that good faith effort to contact HR and let them know what was going on. In addition, Akima is not consistent with this policy. It's not firing every employee who violates this policy. An example in the previous year is that it had a senior manager who used a Facebook post, which by the way was linked to his Akima LLC employment, to say, quote, "You're a effing libtard a-hole," end quote, on a Facebook discussion about Black Lives Matter. Now, this man was allowed to keep his job, and the only thing that happened was he had to delete the post. Obviously, the only difference in these two cases is that the man was talking about Black Lives Matter, which does not have the ability to unconstitutionally overreach into Akima's industry. Finally, it's important to know what we're suing for. We want people to be aware this is happening, but we're not looking to get our job back. Mrs. Briskman already has another job. All we want is for Akima to honor the severance that they promised Ms. Briskman. They told her she would receive 4 weeks severance, but she was only given 2. We just want that extra 2 weeks of pay that we were promised. So that's our presentation of the case. Thanks for your time, and let us know if you have any questions. Thanks.